After supporting my unemployed father for 2 years, I heard him laugh about his stupid ATM daughter. So I took control of my life and walked away. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like and comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from all over the world. The morning alarm pierced through the thin walls of the cramped apartment, but she was already awake. 26-year-old Zinnia Williams had been staring at the water stain on her ceiling for the past hour, calculating how much money she'd need to send home today. Her phone buzzed incessantly, 3 missed calls from her father, Frederick, and 2 text messages demanding his weekly allowance. Working double shifts at the medical supply warehouse had become her routine for the past 2 years. Her supervisor, Mrs. Rosemary, often remarked how dedicated she was, never knowing that every paycheck was already spoken for before she even received it. The other employees went out for drinks after work, but Zinnia rushed home to her studio apartment, counting every dollar twice. "Baby girl, you know Daddy needs his money today," Frederick had said during their last conversation, his voice carrying that familiar tone of entitlement mixed with emotional manipulation. "Your mama's been asking about the rent again, and you know how she gets when she's stressed." Zinnia's mother, Gloria, had been suffering in silence for years. Each phone call home revealed more heartbreak. Frederick coming home drunk at 3 in the morning, spending days at local bars instead of job interviews, and the whispered stories Gloria shared about strange women calling the house. The guilt ate at Zinnia's conscience daily. She grabbed her work uniform from the chair, the same navy blue polo she'd worn for months. The fabric was worn thin from countless washes, but buying new clothes meant less money for her family. As she prepared for another grueling day, Zinnia wondered if her sacrifices were truly helping her family or simply enabling her father's destructive behavior. The answer would come sooner than she expected, in a way that would shatter everything she believed about family loyalty. 3 weeks later, Zinnia received an unexpected call from her childhood friend, Safira, who still lived in their hometown. Safira's voice trembled with a mixture of anger and concern as she revealed what the entire neighborhood had been whispering about for months. "Girl, I can't keep quiet anymore," Safira said, her words rushing together. "Your daddy been seen around here with different women almost every week. Yesterday, Mrs. Kingston saw him at the liquor store buying expensive bottles, bragging about how his daughter takes care of everything while he lives his best life." Zinnia's hands shook as she gripped the phone tighter. The warehouse break room suddenly felt suffocating, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. Her co-workers chatted casually at nearby tables, oblivious to the earthquake happening in her world. "There's more," Safira continued reluctantly. "My cousin works at that new sports bar downtown. She said your father's been bringing different women there, buying rounds for everybody, talking about how he's got it made because his stupid ATM daughter sends him money every week without asking questions." The words hit Zinnia like physical blows. She doubled over, feeling nauseated as the realization crashed over her. For 2 years, she had sacrificed her dreams, her social life, her own financial security to support a man who viewed her as nothing more than a convenient source of income. Her mother's tears, the unpaid bills, the constant stress, all of it suddenly made perfect sense. Frederick wasn't struggling to find work. He was enjoying his unemployment while his daughter funded his entertainment and infidelity. Zinnia's chest tightened as rage and heartbreak warred within her. The caring, dutiful daughter was dying, replaced by someone who finally understood she'd been played for a fool. That evening, Zinnia called her mother directly, bypassing Frederick entirely. Gloria's voice sounded more fragile than usual, tinged with exhaustion and resignation that broke Zinnia's heart into smaller pieces. "Mama, tell me the truth about Daddy," Zinnia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need to know what's really happening at home." The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Gloria began to sob quietly. When she finally spoke, her words confirmed Zinnia's worst fears and revealed even darker truths she hadn't imagined. "Baby, I didn't want you to know. Your father, he hasn't looked for work in over a year. He leaves every morning pretending to go to job interviews, but Mrs. Johnson sees him at the corner store buying lottery tickets and beer before noon. He comes home drunk, screaming about how life owes him better." Gloria's voice cracked as she continued. "The women, they call here sometimes. Young girls barely older than you. They giggle when I answer asking for Frederick. When I confront him, he says they're just friends, but I found receipts in his pockets. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts I never received. Zinnia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her mother's pain across the distance. The money she'd been sending wasn't helping her family survive. It was funding her father's midlife crisis and extramarital adventures while her mother suffered alone. Mama, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I know how hard you work, baby. I see how tired you sound on the phone. I didn't want to burden you with more problems, and I kept hoping he'd change. I kept thinking if I just prayed harder, if I just loved him better. The conversation ended with both women crying, finally acknowledging the painful reality they'd both been avoiding. Zinnia spent the next week gathering evidence and planning her confrontation. She used her vacation days to make an unexpected trip home, telling her parents she was coming for a surprise visit. Her real intention was to catch Frederick in the act and confront him face-to-face about his deception. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon, borrowing her cousin Trevor's car to avoid being spotted. Trevor, who worked as a mechanic downtown, had always suspected Frederick was up to no good but had kept quiet out of respect for family boundaries. "I seen your pops at the casino last month," Trevor admitted as they drove through their old neighborhood. He was throwing money around like he was rich, bought drinks for a whole table of people. When I asked him about it later, he said he'd hit a lucky streak, but we both know he don't have gambling money unless his stupid ATM daughter is funding it, Zinnia finished bitterly. They parked across the street from her childhood home, the small house that had once represented love and security now feeling like a monument to betrayal. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling worse than she remembered. Her mother's flower garden, once her pride and joy, had withered from neglect. At 2 p.m., Frederick emerged from the house dressed in his best clothes Zinnia had helped pay for. He walked with a swagger that infuriated her, checking his reflection in car windows as he headed toward downtown. They followed at a safe distance, Trevor's hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as they witnessed Frederick's routine of deception unfold. The first stop was the liquor store, where Frederick purchased expensive whiskey and wine. The second stop revealed the most painful truth yet. He met a young woman outside the beauty salon, someone who couldn't have been older than 25. Zinnia watched in horrified fascination as her father embraced the young woman with an intimacy that made her stomach turn. The woman, petite with braided hair and a bright smile, looked genuinely happy to see Frederick. She wore expensive jewelry and designer clothes that Zinnia recognized as recent purchases funded by her own paychecks. They followed the couple to an upscale restaurant downtown, a place Zinnia had never been able to afford despite working overtime every week. Through the window, she watched her father order champagne and expensive entrees, playing the role of a successful man without a care in the world. "That's Beatrice," Trevor said grimly, recognizing the woman. "She works at the nail salon on 5th Street. Word is, she thinks your father owns a construction company. He's been telling people he's a successful businessman who's taking a break between major projects." The betrayal cut deeper than Zinnia had anticipated. Not only was Frederick stealing her money and breaking her mother's heart, but he was also living an elaborate lie, pretending to be someone he wasn't to impress women young enough to be his daughter. As they sat in the car watching the disgusting display, Zinnia's phone buzzed with a text message from Frederick. "Baby girl, mama needs medicine money today. Can you send $200? Doctor says her blood pressure is acting up again." The audacity left Zinnia speechless. While he sat in an expensive restaurant with his girlfriend, he was texting lies about her mother's health to extract more money. The manipulation was so calculated, so cruel that it took her breath away. Trevor noticed her expression and asked what was wrong. When she showed him the text, his face darkened with anger. "We calling him out right now," Trevor said, reaching for the door handle, but Zinnia stopped him. "No. I want to hear what he says about me when he thinks I'm not listening." They waited until Frederick and Beatrice moved to a more secluded corner booth. Then Zinnia and Trevor entered the restaurant and found seats at the bar where they could observe without being seen. The bartender, a friendly woman named Lisa, recognized Trevor and struck up a conversation that provided perfect cover for their surveillance mission. What Zinnia overheard in the next 30 minutes destroyed every positive memory she had of her father. Frederick was regaling Beatrice with stories about his business success, claiming he owned multiple properties and had investments generating passive income. When Beatrice asked about his family, his response made Zinnia's blood run cold. "My wife's basically a roommate at this point," Frederick said with a dismissive wave. "She's gotten old and depressing, always complaining about money and responsibilities. But my daughter, she's my little goldmine. Girl works like a slave and sends me money every week because she thinks she's helping the family." Beatrice laughed, clearly impressed by what she perceived as Frederick's financial acumen. "That's smart having your kid support you. My baby daddy never gives me anything for our son. The beauty of it is she's so guilty about leaving us behind when she moved away for work that she'll never stop sending money. I told her I've been looking for jobs, but why would I work when I've got a stupid ATM daughter who pays for everything? She's too naive and too guilty to ever question where the money really goes." The laughter that followed was like acid in Zinnia's veins. She watched her father lean back in his chair, completely satisfied with himself, while describing her as nothing more than a financial resource to be exploited. The man who had raised her, who had taught her about family loyalty and responsibility, was laughing about manipulating her love and guilt for his own selfish purposes. Trevor's hand found her shoulder as tears began streaming down her face, but she wasn't crying from sadness anymore. She was crying from pure, unfiltered rage. Unable to listen to another word, Zinnia stood up and walked directly to their table. The look of shock and terror on Frederick's face would have been comical under different circumstances, but there was nothing funny about the destruction of a family built on lies. "Hello, Daddy," Zinnia said, her voice deadly calm despite the storm raging inside her. "I hope you're enjoying your meal. I know I paid for it." Frederick's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water while Beatrice looked between them in confusion. The expensive whiskey suddenly seemed to evaporate from his system as the gravity of the situation hit him. "Zinnia, baby, what are you doing here? This isn't what it looks like. I can explain." "Explain what?" Zinnia interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "Explain how you've been lying to me for 2 years. Explain how you've been using my money to wine and dine girlfriends while Mama cries herself to sleep every night? Or maybe you want to explain how I'm just your stupid ATM daughter, who's too naive to figure out your game." The color drained from Frederick's face as he realized she had overheard his conversation. Other diners began to notice the commotion, but Zinnia was beyond caring about public embarrassment. Beatrice, finally understanding the situation, looked mortified. "Frederick, you told me you owned a construction company. You said you were divorced." "He's not divorced," Zinnia said, turning to the younger woman with surprising gentleness. "He's married to my mother, who's been supporting his lies and suffering in silence while he spends my paychecks on you and whoever else catches his fancy." The truth bomb exploded across the table. Beatrice gathered her purse and stood up quickly, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "You're disgusting," she told Frederick before walking away, leaving him alone to face his daughter's wrath. The confrontation was just beginning. Frederick attempted to recover his composure, switching to the manipulative tactics that had worked for so long. His voice took on the familiar paternal tone that had always made Zinnia feel guilty for questioning him. "Baby girl, you don't understand the whole situation. That girl means nothing to me. I was just trying to network, you know? Sometimes you have to wine and dine people to get business connections. I've been working on some deals that could change everything for our family." Zinnia stared at him with newfound clarity, seeing through the lies that had once seemed so convincing. The desperate edge in his voice, the way his eyes darted around looking for escape routes, the practiced smoothness of his deception, it all seemed pathetic now. "Stop lying," she said simply. "I know you haven't looked for work in over a year. I know about the other women, the gambling, the drinking. I know Mama hasn't had her blood pressure medication in weeks because you spent that money on yourself. I know everything, Daddy, and I'm done pretending I don't." Frederick's facade cracked completely. The charming, victim-playing father disappeared, replaced by someone bitter and entitled. "You ungrateful little. You think you're better than me now? I raised you, I put a roof over your head, I sacrificed for you when you were growing up. You owe me." "I don't owe you anything," Zinnia replied, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I've paid my debt to this family 10 times over. I've sacrificed my 20s, my dreams, my financial security because I thought I was helping people I loved. But you don't love me, you love what I can do for you." The restaurant had grown quiet around them, other patrons pretending not to watch while clearly invested in the drama unfolding. Frederick seemed to realize he was losing control of the narrative and tried one last desperate manipulation. Your mama's gonna suffer if you stop helping us. You want that on your conscience? You want to be responsible for your own mother's pain. For the first time in years, Zinnia smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally seen through the darkness. Mama's going to be fine, Zinnia said with conviction that surprised even her. Because she's coming to live with me. I've already figured it out. I can support one person who actually needs help, not a grown man who refuses to take care of himself. The announcement hit Frederick like a physical blow. His primary victim and his financial source were both slipping away simultaneously, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions for the first time in years. You can't take her away from me, he stammered, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. This is her home, her life is here. You can't just destroy our family because you're having some kind of breakdown. I'm not destroying our family, Zinnia replied calmly. You already did that. I'm just refusing to keep enabling your destruction. She pulled out her phone and showed him the screenshots she'd taken of their conversation history. 2 years of manipulative texts, false emergencies, and emotional blackmail designed to keep the money flowing. She'd also documented the timeline of his lies, cross-referencing his claimed job interviews with the reality of his activities. I've kept records of everything. Every dollar I sent, every lie you told, every excuse you made. Do you want to know how much money you've stolen from me over the past 2 years? $43,000. That's a down payment on a house, Daddy. That's a new car and a college fund. That's my entire future that I gave away because I believed you loved me. The number hung in the air between them like a verdict. $43,000. Money that could have transformed Zinnia's life but instead had funded her father's selfishness and infidelity. Frederick tried to speak but no words came. The weight of his theft, presented in such stark financial terms, was undeniable even to someone practiced in self-deception. Trevor appeared beside their table, having watched the confrontation from a distance. Time to go, cuz, he said gently to Zinnia, then turned to Frederick with barely controlled anger. And you need to find your own way home. They drove directly to Zinnia's childhood home, where Gloria was sitting on the front porch looking older and more fragile than her years. The sound of Trevor's car made her look up hopefully, and when she saw Zinnia, her face lit up with the first genuine smile Zinnia had seen from her mother in months. Baby, what are you doing here? Your father said you were too busy with work to visit, Gloria said, embracing her daughter tightly. Mama, we need to talk, Zinnia said gently, helping her mother sit back down. And then we need to pack your things. You're coming home with me. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Zinnia revealed everything she had discovered about Frederick's deception, showing her mother the evidence she had gathered. Gloria listened in stunned silence, occasionally gasping or shaking her head in disbelief. I knew something was wrong, Gloria admitted tearfully. I knew he wasn't really looking for work and I suspected there were other women, but I didn't know about the money. I didn't know he was lying to you too. I thought maybe if I just kept praying and trying harder he would change. You can't change someone who doesn't want to change, Mama. And you can't love someone into being a better person. Trust me, I've been trying for 2 years. They spent the next 3 hours packing Gloria's belongings while she shared stories about the extent of Frederick's neglect and emotional abuse. He had been coming home drunk and angry most nights, blaming Gloria for their financial problems while secretly spending Zinnia's money on his personal entertainment. Sometimes he would disappear for days, Gloria revealed. He'd tell me he was staying with his brother in the next town, but his brother called here looking for him once. I knew he was lying, but I didn't know where he really was. As they loaded boxes into Trevor's truck, neighbors began to emerge from their houses. Mrs. Kingston, the elderly woman who lived next door, approached them with tears in her eyes. Baby, I'm so glad you're taking your mama away from here, she said to Zinnia. That man has been disrespecting her in this house for too long. We all seen what he was doing, but we didn't know how to help. Frederick didn't return home until late that evening, long after Zinnia and Gloria had left for the city. According to Trevor, who had stayed behind to witness the final confrontation, Frederick had arrived to find an empty house and a note explaining Gloria's departure. The note, written in Gloria's careful handwriting, was simple but devastating. I've gone to live with Zinnia. I won't be coming back. The house is yours, but so are all the bills. It's time for you to take care of yourself. Trevor reported that Frederick had flown into a rage, calling Zinnia's phone repeatedly and leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. When she finally listened to them the next day, the messages revealed the full scope of his narcissistic personality. The early messages were angry and demanding. You bring my wife back here right now. You have no right to break up our marriage. The middle messages turned manipulative. Baby girl, I know you're upset, but this is going too far. Your mama belongs here with me. Think about what you're doing to our family. The final messages revealed pure desperation. Please, Zinnia, I'm sorry about what you heard. I didn't mean it. I was just trying to impress that girl. You know you're not stupid, you're the smartest person I know. Please don't abandon me. But Zinnia felt no satisfaction in his desperation, only sadness for the years she had wasted believing in someone who had never deserved her faith. She blocked his number after saving the voicemails as evidence, then focused her energy on helping her mother adjust to her new life. Gloria's transformation began almost immediately. Away from Frederick's constant criticism and emotional manipulation, she began to smile more, eat better, and talk about dreams she had abandoned years ago. She enrolled in a community college course on bookkeeping and started talking about maybe getting a part-time job once she felt stronger. The healing process would take time, but both women felt lighter than they had in years. 3 months after leaving Frederick, unexpected consequences began rippling through their old community. Without Zinnia's financial support and Gloria's unpaid domestic labor, Frederick's carefully constructed facade crumbled rapidly. Saphira called with updates that were both satisfying and sobering. Frederick had been evicted from the family home after failing to pay rent for 2 consecutive months. His car had been repossessed and he had been arrested for writing bad checks at several local businesses. Girl, it's like watching a house of cards fall down, Saphira reported. He tried to move in with his brother, but that lasted exactly 1 week before they had a fight about money. Now he's staying in some motel on the outskirts of town, and word is he's been begging people for loans. But the most shocking revelation came from an unexpected source. Beatrice, the young woman from the restaurant, had contacted Zinnia through social media with information that changed everything they thought they knew about Frederick's deception. I need to tell you something about your father, Beatrice's message read. After that day at the restaurant, I did some digging because I felt so stupid for being fooled. He wasn't just lying to me and you, he was running the same scam on at least 3 other women in town. According to Beatrice's investigation, Frederick had been telling different women different stories about his life, creating elaborate fictional backgrounds to extract money, gifts, and support from multiple sources simultaneously. One woman thought he was a widowed construction worker, another believed he was a divorced mechanic, and a third had been told he was a veteran struggling with disability payments. He's been playing this game for years, Beatrice continued. I talked to one of the other women and she said she's been giving him money for almost as long as you have. We were all just different ATMs funding the same pathetic man's lifestyle. The scope of Frederick's manipulation was staggering. Zinnia realized that her family's suffering was just one small part of a much larger pattern of exploitation and deceit. 1 year later, Zinnia stood in the kitchen of her new 2-bedroom apartment, watching her mother prepare Sunday dinner with a joy and energy that had been missing for years. Gloria had not only completed her bookkeeping course but had also landed a part-time job at a local nonprofit organization helping other women escape abusive situations. I never thought I'd say this, Gloria said, stirring a pot of her famous chili, but leaving your father was the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel like I'm alive again for the first time in decades. Zinnia had used the money she was no longer sending to Frederick to improve both their lives dramatically. She had enrolled in night classes to finish her nursing degree, something she had abandoned years earlier to work full-time. They had moved to a nicer neighborhood, and for the first time in her adult life, Zinnia had started a savings account that she controlled completely. The transformation wasn't just financial, it was emotional and spiritual. Both women had started therapy to address the trauma of Frederick's manipulation and abuse. They had learned to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation and to establish healthy boundaries in their relationships. Frederick had attempted to contact them several times over the months, usually during holidays or when he faced new legal or financial crises. Each message followed the same pattern: anger, manipulation, false promises, and finally desperate begging. But both women had learned to see these tactics for what they were: the dying gasps of a man who had finally run out of people to exploit. The last they heard, Frederick was living in a halfway house and working at a gas station, finally forced to take responsibility for his own survival. Some family members criticized Zinnia for abandoning her father, but she had learned to ignore their judgment. She understood now that enabling someone's destructive behavior wasn't love. It was a form of cruelty that helped no one. As they sat down to their Sunday meal, Zinnia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The pain of discovering her father's betrayal had been excruciating, but it had also been liberating. For the first time in her adult life, she was living for herself and the people who truly deserved her love and support. The stupid ATM daughter was gone forever, replaced by a strong, independent woman who understood her own worth and refused to accept anything less than genuine love and respect. Thanks for watching. Give us a like if you liked the video and share with us in the comments what you think about this lovely tale. We always enjoy reading your comments.